Hello and welcome to the Optimising Based on Data video. Today we cover one of the most important aspects of running a successful AdWords account, which is of course optimization. Without optimizing your account, it will never reach its full potential. You'll be paying a higher cost per lead or cost per sale than you need to, and you'll be wasting budget in areas that do not perform. A successful AdWords account is perfected over weeks, months and years. It can't be turned on and left to run without measuring the impact of the clicks received, then taking the appropriate action. You must have a finely tuned account, and analytics is key to helping you achieve just that. It's important to note that optimizing based on data is an ongoing job. It can't just be done once and forgotten about, because as the more clicks you get, the more data you have in which you can analyze to finely tune the performance of your account. And it's that fine tuning which is going to make the difference and allow you to get greater returns than your competitors. As you would expect, AdWords data pulls through very nicely into analytics because they're both Google platforms. And analytics can provide a deeper level of insight into your AdWords activity as it takes into account additional metrics as standard. So other than looking at conversion data, as a minimum it can also give a very good indication of user behavior based on bounce rate, pages per session and time on site stats. Analytics is a very comprehensive platform. We could create a product on analytics alone. So this video will give you a very good idea as to where to go and what to look at, but you must commit to understanding analytics so you can keep on going in and feeling confident as to what you're looking at so you can keep improving your account. You'll want to be taking into consideration other stats as well as goal conversions. By understanding this data, you'll be able to see potential within keywords and take the necessary action. So it may just be a case that you might want to increase bids on particular keywords that look to have good user engagement, but they're not performing at their full potential just yet. Use secondary dimensions to drill down wherever possible, and to discover trends, open the date range and select different metrics on the graph to paint a visual picture as to the progress of your account. So in analytics, the main place you want to be looking for the AdWords data is within acquisition and then AdWords. The campaigns section provides some very key data all in one place, but make sure you look into the other sections under AdWords for greater detail in other areas. For instance, you could look into keywords or hour of the day, but as you'll know from previous videos, you could get time of day stats from within AdWords itself. But you may want to look into this area just to double check the stats that you're acting on. Also, conversions, then goals and overview gives a great snapshot of the overall sources of traffic that bring in your conversions. Then you can see how AdWords contributes compared to other sources of traffic. Once you have sufficient data, you'll be able to understand which areas of your account perform the best. Now this should be based on true conversions rather than intent-based conversions, so quote requests, calls, online sales, form completes, etc. Once you've identified the keywords that are getting the conversions, then you want to consider splitting these out into their own campaigns. This will essentially allow the keywords room to breathe, so if there is enough search volume available, then you will be able to spend more budget on those keywords specifically and increase the return on your spend. Because if those keywords are sharing a campaign with other keywords that don't perform as well, you are essentially diluting the budget that can actually be spent on the higher performing keywords because it has to share it. Sometimes if you've got quite a lot of history in a campaign and you're doing this for the first time, you might want to consider moving out the keywords that don't perform. Therefore you're keeping the history of the ones that do. This will really just depend on how long your account's been running, but whichever way you choose, you want to be splitting these things out so you can give ample budget to the areas that perform best for you. If you have an e-commerce site, ensure that you have e-commerce tracking in place. As discussed in an earlier video, This is a more sophisticated piece of traffic, and you'll have to get your web developer to follow the Google instructions and place the necessary code on your website. Once you do have this, however, you can then identify the amount of spend on each transaction. You can also use normal goals to track visitors getting to the second or third stage of a checkout process but not buying. This could well identify a stage in your checkout process that has a very high drop-off rate, and it will allow you to identify that very quickly. With that sort of information, you can then go back and make sure that you fix your website in the necessary step. Also, the people that trigger these goals, being that they have put something in their basket and they've started to go through the checkout process, are great prospects for remarketing. So they were almost there, so why not follow up with a great ad to encourage the purchase? So what do we mean by intent? Intent-based goals are important because we want to understand what the user's intentions were when they triggered the goal. What conclusions can be drawn from measuring the amount of contact page views as an example? If you're not using call tracking, it may turn out that this is actually a very important page to track because people are going here to get your telephone number. You're going to want to treat this data with a large pinch of salt, but it's better to have some sort of intentional data than nothing at all when it comes to phone calls if you don't have something more sophisticated in place. What about those looking at your testimonials page? Wouldn't it be great to know that the people that have been to your testimonials page convert at a much higher rate than those who don't? Therefore, you may want to make the changes on your website to encourage more testimonial page views. If people need that extra bit of credibility or social proof, then you should give it to them to aid your conversions. So obviously some goals are more important than others. You shouldn't necessarily treat someone simply viewing your contact page as the same as someone who has actively completed a contact form, and you do need to bear this difference in mind when you're optimizing. But as with all this data, you need to be able to take a view, take into consideration all the stats and make an informed decision. As said, call tracking is highly recommended, as scenarios like the above can often lead to an element of guesswork. Now, as covered in an earlier video, Google do have their own call tracking service, but you don't own that telephone number, and there's no guarantee as to what happens to that telephone number further down the line. If you wanted to use an independent call tracking service, then you have the likes of Response Tap, but they are paid for services, so you will need to take a view on how you wish to measure your telephone calls. So which goal should be the most important? Now, typically someone who picks up the phone and makes an inquiry is the hottest prospect. They can't wait for an email response, they're not hiding behind their computer and just filling in a form. So if we can track phone calls, that's going to be one of the most important things we can measure. Also, contact form completions are one of the easiest things to track. Normally they'll go to a separate thank you URL, and that data is easily pulled through into AdWords and analytics. Another important conversion would be opt-ins, so people who subscribe or download something of value in exchange for their email address. So you can then follow up with nurture campaigns to provide that person more value and gain their trust, with the long-term view of making them a customer. So in summary, in order for your AdWords account to achieve maximum returns, you must analyze the data available to you and optimize based on that data. The aim obviously to weed out any areas in which you are spending your budget that show no measurable impact on your desired results. You want to be looking at more than just conversions, be aware of the other metrics that allow you to paint a picture, then spot trends and commit to understanding analytics. Also importantly, use this data to improve areas on your website that could assist overall conversions. Now let's go over to analytics now and have a look into these different areas. Okay, so we're now over in analytics. One of the first places we want to look is within acquisition, then AdWords, and then campaigns. You'll see here that there's lots of different options under here, so bid adjustments, keywords, search queries, hours of day, etc. So some of these areas you'll be quite familiar with from working within AdWords, particularly through the Dimensions tab. but you can verify that data that you've been seeing through analytics as well. Now in the campaigns tab, there's lots of data available to us. You can see that it brings through all of our campaigns, and within this section we have the ability to look at each goal individually. So we could look at just the people who have gone through to the Contact Us page, and we could order our campaigns based on that data. We may take some goals more seriously than others, so we may want to be just looking at the contact form complete goals. You can therefore look at that data individually. You can use secondary dimensions up here, so you may want to look at the actual keyword that got the conversion, which can be found here. You can change this secondary dimension based on lots of different options, so you may want to look at the ad content that got the conversions. You may want to look at the display URL, the keyword match type, etc. You can also go up to site usage. This gives a good overview of average session duration, pages per session, bounce rate, and overall total goal completions. You can look at ad group level, and again see a more granular view of where your goal completions are coming from. You can go to the actual goal set, and you can see the percentages lined up one by one of each of your goals. So we can see the Contact Us page view gets a very high conversion rate, but the Contact Us form complete gets an understandably lower conversion rate, but still very healthy, and we're quite happy with that. Going back to the summary, and then looking at keywords as a secondary dimension. You can use the conversion data to find keywords that might not look like they're being effective, but what you may be able to find is that there is a good time on site and a very low bounce rate. So all this data needs really careful analysis. You may want to look at the graph to get an understanding as to how we're trending over time. So if we set a longer term view, we can look at what's happened to sessions over time. We might want to look at overall total goal completions. So we can see that there's been a massive jump since the beginning of the year, and it's at 88 so far, which is more than last month. This is a great way of being able to visualize what's happening on the account. You can look at goal conversion rates, particular goals, and lots of other metrics, so highly advise using this. Looking again at the keywords, take a careful look at the other metrics available to you. So bounce rate, you can see here, is quite steady, and then all of a sudden you have a 90% bounce rate on a particular keyword. Now, for the amount of money that you're spending on this keyword, is that a keeper? The pages per session would suggest that it's not, but maybe the cost per conversion may make it worthwhile. You may want to lower your bid on that particular keyword, or you may want to test actually pausing it and seeing what impact that has. Over on the left hand side, if you go down to conversions and then goals and overview, this will give you a good overview of all the goals you have in the account, and also you can click here to see what source of traffic they come from and how it compares with the other sources of traffic, being organic, direct traffic, social, etc. This allows us to see at a glance our main form complete goals compared to the intent based goals, which are obviously higher. You may also want to look at the time lag area and here you can see that the conversions tend to happen on the day of the click, but some do happen after, and 34 have happened between day 12 and 30. Now this would be a result of remarketing, and I would start experimenting with stretching our remarketing window to over 30 days to see how that affects this number. So going back to the AdWords and campaigns, have a look at average session durations, particularly for certain destination URLs. See if there's any areas for improvement that can be made, and whether any particular page stands out in terms of its bounce rate and its low session duration. This will allow you to improve the landing pages of your website as well. So using this data here is going to be really key for you to understand not only the keywords, ad groups and campaigns that are getting the conversions, but also the other metrics that are involved and how these might show areas of potential for other keywords that don't look like they're performing at the moment but could be high performers of the future. So to recap, make sure that you're going into acquisition and AdWords and also the conversions and goals. Start trying to familiarize yourself with the different areas of analytics and how all this data can help you really finely tune your AdWords account.